Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and people. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter, and I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by my good brother, Jaylen Christie. Now, if you're a listener to the podcast, I think he's been on the podcast like 3 years ago, many moons ago.
Yeah.
But this is a good fraternity brother of mine, a fellow blurred black nerd. That's what our episode was about many years ago. One of the people that I met randomly through the world of the fraternity, but then we actually met in person in real life. I said, was it IRL? And he's just as cool and just as nice. And he's my people in person and virtually. So, you know, every time he in the DC area, he better hit me up. You know, he missed me last time. And if ever I ever go down to Florida, which I'll someday get down there and get to Florida, we're going to chop it up. But he is back. If you have not listened to the previous episode, I'm going to let him introduce himself. And we're going to go right into it because he has something that he's done that is monumental that we want to share on the podcast. But Brother Jaylen, go ahead and drop who you are on the listeners.
So first of all, Philip, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I am Jaylen Christie. So happy and excited to be back on Positive Philter. This is going to be a great episode. And I am a writer, speaker, public relations practitioner, cartoonist, and I am pleased to debut my comic book, Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids.
Now, if you listen, this is a blurred's dream come true. And what I mean by that is that he didn't just partake in fandom, he created it. And so we already talked about our love for science fiction and comics and how we thought that sometimes there was a narrative that Blackness was not connected to comic bookness and all that, that there was some stigma about being a blurred or nerd, and destigmatized that Blackness is not monolithic and we should have a space in that, right? Like, why can't we have a space for Black people? So Jaylen, tell us a little bit about your love of comic books again and your love of just sci-fi and that blurredness.
Yeah, I think for me, Philip, I think that it was escapism for me when I was a child. I'm very, very creative and very imaginative. And I love comic books. I grew up watching the Super Friends before they were known as the Justice League, before the Justice League cartoon series debuted when I was in high school. I had the Super Friends when I was a kid. So loved Batman, loved The Flash, was a big fan of Black Lightning. Loved the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Zack, the Black Ranger, season 1, 1993 was my favorite. So yeah, like I loved superheroes as a child. And then as I grew up, that love never went away. The one thing that I will say, Philip, and I know that you and I have discussed this before, is, you know, when we were children, there wasn't a lot of representation regarding, you know, diversity when it came to superheroes. I think you had your token superheroes. Like, if you look at the Super Friends, what do they have? Everyone, for the vast majority of the Super Friends, were white. All right, even though Superman is an alien from Krypton, Superman ass still white. All right, so there was Black Vulcan and there was Apache Chief, but I feel like those are like your token characters. You know, it's like, oh, let's give the minorities something, you know, that they can identify with. You know, so when I was a child, I created my own superheroes, my own characters that were Black and brown skinned. I created the Brain Kids when I was in the 1st grade, and I created Stinkbombman when I was in the 3rd grade. And they're played for laughs. My characters they're meant to be comedic. Like it's pure comedy. But as I got older, those characters they stuck with me. They never went away. And now as a 35-year-old, I'm just so blessed to be able to share those characters with the real world.
I love it. And I love the fact that, you said that, because I was thinking about that the whole time. I was like, man, you're right. Like, and I had my uncles gave me all their comic books. And so maybe not even full media representation like on TV and cartoons, but like I got the old school like Luke Cage cartoon comic books. Black Panther before he was in the cartoons, but so they were dabbled, right, like tokenized, but dabbled in actual print as well, like Bishop and Storm. But then there wasn't always that cross representation of those characters on other mediums, like you said, cartoons and media. So if you were really into it, you saw these characters represented in the comic books.
Yep.
They still were sparsely.
Precisely. No, you were absolutely correct. So yeah, they were in the comic books. I think that Chris Claremont comes to mind. He was a prominent writer, or is a prominent writer with Marvel. I know he had a lot to do with the X-Men and was very influential in how Storm was depicted. But yes. In the comic books when we were kids, there was representation. Now, there was not a lot of representation, so I will be clear about that. There was not a lot of representation, but there was more representation in the comic books than there were in the cartoons. And back then, cartoons, what happens with cartoons? When they're a hit, they produce action figures and dolls and toys. So, when I was a child, you tag along with your parents to, Walmart. We didn't have Target back then. We did not have Target when I was a kid. All right. When I grew up in Tallahassee, we had Walmart. We had Walmart.
You have Kmart.
We had Walmart, Kmart, and service merchandise. All right. Those were the three. Target was not in existence. So, whenever, I'd, do good in school or something, my parents would, take me to the toy department at Walmart, and I was able to pick out an action figure that I wanted. And there were no Black action figures that I can immediately recall. I do remember there being a Lando Calrissian action figure that I came across. I believe I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And, for those of you that don't know, Lando Calrissian is a coolest man in space. He's in the Star Wars franchise, and he was played by Billy D. Williams in the original trilogy, and he was played by Billy D. in the most recent Star Wars picture. I think it was the Rise of Skywalker. I believe that was.
Man, with the solo jump, it was what's his name? Donald Glover.
Donald Glover was in Solo. He played the younger version of Lando. Yeah, and actually, Donald Glover did such a good job that he may be getting his own Disney Plus TV show. Lando Calrissian is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Actually, Lando Calrissian probably is my favorite Star Wars character. I remember that being so profound to me as a kid. He shows up in The Empire Strikes Back as the Baron Administrator, which is essentially the governor of Cloud City, a floating city on the planet Bespin. And I just thought that was just so amazing to me. But yeah, I remember, it being impactful when I came across this action figure. Because I was like, that's a rarity when I was a child. Now you fast forward to 2023, and I think there's been fantastic strides regarding representation. Now, now I go to Target. Kmart's gone, virtually non-existent. But now, when I go to the toy department, because I'm still a big kid, still a nerd, still, collect Lego sets and things of that nature, the representation is there. The representation is there. So I am just so happy for kids these days. They've got so many things that they can choose from. Captain America now is Black, which I think is fantastic. Black Panther also with Marvel, which I also think is phenomenal. You've got Monica Rambeau in WandaVision, which I think is great. There was a Black Lightning TV show. It ended a couple of years ago, but it was pretty good on the CW. So you're getting more and more representation now, and I'm just so excited to see that. But like I was saying earlier, Philip, when I was a kid, I didn't have that, so I created my own characters.
Yeah, and I want to dive into 2 things that you said, but I want to know, like, one thing I want to dive into is when you were creating these characters, you just sketch them out. What did you write the stories, or were you doing the full like squares for the comic books? How did that look when you were a kid?
It looked tacky as hell, but you couldn't tell first grade Jaylen that he wasn't doing it. All right, he was handling his business, No, so I created the Brain Kids first when I was in first grade. The Brain Kids are Jesse and Brittany McBrilliant, better known as Brain J and Brain B. Together, they're the Brain Kids, and they protect the city of Princeton Bay. So I knew that they were superheroes, and I knew that they fought villains, but that story was not fleshed out. I don't think they had parents. I don't think they, I don't even think they were in school. I think they were just, full-time superheroes that were kids when they were created. And then I created another series in third grade. These are homemade comic books that I'm talking about, Philip.
Yeah.
So my mom and my dad would bring home paper and pens and crayons and colored pencils and all of that, so I could create comic books from scratch. So I created Stinkbombman when I was in third grade and developed him as a character. Now I feel like Stinkbombman actually had a plot, though. He was from the planet Stinkopolis. I believe he crash landed on Earth and then stuck around because he saw that the city was in disarray and wanted to, be of service and help. And he had his own rogues gallery and all of that. So I think Stinkbombman was a little bit more developed when I look back on it. But then as I transitioned from elementary school to middle school, I started writing short stories featuring Stinkbombman, the Brain Kids, and my friends would ask to read those short stories. And then when I got to high school, I started, drawing the characters together and then developing our actual plot and building the world in which they inhabit. And then now, when I decided that this was the right time to finally release a comic book, a first volume, I was able to go in and develop like a full structure, add in, a mystery element, give the characters, a backstory, and really, really flesh it out. So I'm really excited about that.
So you're drawing it, and you're like a kid drawing it, but then high school developed more to the writing side and story writing without the illustrations. And with the stories, were you saving them on your computer or like just a notebook, like a notebook? Like how were you keeping them?
So I was actually doing both, Phil. So I never stopped drawing, I never stopped illustrating. So I was illustrating, all throughout elementary, middle school, and high school. I would do both. I would write short stories on my computer, but I'd also write short stories. Like I design it like it was a book, like I get paper, then I fold it and I'd staple it to make like a mini book. And then with a pen, I just write stories as, from scratch. I would have the general idea in my head, but then I just, write it and then draw the illustrations as well. And then as I got older, once I got to college, I kind of stopped because I had to focus on my studies, but it was always still an aspiration of mine to, turn this into something one day. And then what I did was, for this first volume, which has already been released, it's a collection of 3 stories. So one of those short stories I wrote when I was age 13. The only thing I did was I just updated it for a 2023 audience. And then the main feature was a story that I developed when I was in the 10th grade, which is also featured in this volume. And then last year, I actually went and illustrated a 10-page comic book to introduce the series. So that is the first story in this volume. So the one that I drew last year, brand new drawings, professionally done because I hired a letterer and a colorist. That is what kicks off the series. So it's those 3 stories included in this first volume. So you get to see the characters throughout, my life. So it's 3 different ages of Jaylen, 3 different versions of Jaylen, essentially, that, created this first volume.
So you were able to find your old stories, really repurpose them, but really that essential essence of what it was when you really thought of this as a kid.
Yeah.
Technically, you just said it in this. If we knew you as a person, this is not only a comic, but this is also your development as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
A comic book, right?
Yes.
It's pretty dope. And I wanted the part that I was going to branch off to was like, how important is that on the psyche of a kid to see themselves in these stories, right? Like, and you said things and themes that kind of illustrate how that's important, right? Like you look at a hero for service, and now you're an alpha that does service, right?
Yes, sir.
Think about that, or think about like the heroes that you look up to, like strength or resilience, or most heroes have like terrible life stories, right? Mm-hmm. Like most of them come out of tragedy, right? Like he was taken from their planet. He an orphan, or this one lost his uncle, or something like that. Mm-hmm. But they still were able to take that pain, do something to help others, and channel it, right? So there's something in the psyche of heroes, the storytelling of heroes that connects with I think everyone and humans. But also I think there's a psyche part about like seeing heroes that look like you, so you can say this grand story of heroism and all that. I can be a hero too. So can you talk about that, the psyche of that, the psyche of heroism, and connecting to the story and connecting to the characters?
Sure. Well, I think you hit it on the head. There is power in seeing yourself reflected in pages. Damn straight, damn straight. I know that my desire is for when children and teenagers, when they hopefully read Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids, they're inspired, and realize that they too can be just as smart as the Brain Kids, and achieve their own goals. Jesse McBrilliant and Brittany McBrilliant, they have no superpowers. They are black students, black teenagers living in the fictional city of Princeton Bay, and their father, Dr. Jeffrey McBrilliant, he's a man of science. He's gone missing, and they're investigating. They're investigating where their dad disappeared to. But Jesse and Brittany, as I indicated, they have no superpowers. What they use is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to stop supervillains and save the day. They're with their grandfather, Dr. Beaumont McBrilliant, who, by the way, is openly gay and proud of it. He's a genius. He helped his grandchildren, Jesse and Brittany, develop what's called a brainerator. And the brainerator gives Jesse and Brittany the ability to shift, so to speak, into the Brain Kids. And then in their Brain Kids persona, they use their smarts to fight baddies, and avenge wrongs. And I would hope that, with it being 2023, with, diversity, I mean, more than ever, diversity is important. And given, some of the things that are going on in the world today, my desire is that for, younger individuals, when they read this and see some of the artwork and they're following along with the story, that they see themselves, because when I was a kid, it was majority white. But even though Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids has 3 black superheroes at the forefront, I really try to embrace diversity across its many dimensions. So Jesse's best friend, Riley is white. Riley also happens to have 2 dads. Brittany's best friend is Muslim. And there's a young girl in the comic book that has a crush on Jesse. She is of the disabled community. Jesse has a crush on Elle Yamamoto, a Japanese American girl. And like there are students at James Baldwin High School. That's where the characters attend, that have different body types as well. So I really tried to show, that the world is a diverse place. If the world is diverse in reality, then I feel like it should be diverse when, you're creating, content. Like, you want to be as accurate as possible, right? Even though Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids is essentially heightened reality. I mean, there are people with superpowers that are fighting for God's sake, but I tried to make it as diverse as possible and unapologetically. Like, I believe in, variety is the spice of life. If we were all the same, where would be the fun in that? And what I will share really quick is, each of the antagonists in Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids, they don't really see themselves as villains. They may be jaded. They may have gone through something traumatic, which is, created this particular mindset that they have. But Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids, they are working together in this issue to stop Dr. Eugene Changewell, also known as Face Shifter, who has the ability to morph into anyone that he chooses to. All right. Face Shifter has developed this contraption that has the ability to have everyone in the city turn the same skin color in a way to kind of eliminate, prejudice, some of the things that he experienced when he was a kid. So each issue will have a particular message. Kind of want the reader to, think. But yeah, man, yeah. There's power. There's power in seeing yourself reflected on the page for real. Absolutely, absolutely.
I was, man, I don't even know where I was going. I was thinking the next question I was actively listening about the story because I was thinking like, wow, like, you know, as I was growing up, did we have any openly gay superhero characters? Or
Yeah,
I can't think of one mentally. But do
yeah,
we have people with different abilities? The only person I could think of different abilities was Professor X
yep.
in the wheelchair. But that's the only like really I was really going through my catalog and trying to think of all the different identities that you were naming and trying to like and I was going in because I noticed. I mean,
Yeah.
we noticed that we can throw a character Star Wars. We could dip and dabble in all these different genres. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I was like. I may not be I'm not a fan of anything. Honestly, I be because I just be watching all kinds of stuff. I just like like so like they go to the comic book convention and like what table you got a booth at? I'm like I don't know. I like all this stuff. I like Walking Dead. I like all this stuff.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
was going through my catalog and I was like, even with that diverse audience and diverse, watching the different mediums, the film, the TV, all that, I could not think of all these diverse identities as much in mainstream media.
yeah. I think that representation is
Or sci-fi
important.
media. I think diverse abilities is in all kinds of media, but I'm thinking the sci-fi genre.
Yeah,
Genre.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you. I feel like Star Trek was ahead of its time.
Yes,
Gene
okay. Yeah.
Roddenberry, Gene created something special back in the '60s. Now, Gene might have had the vision for it, but I know that he had some pushback behind the scenes, which is why, Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura, beautiful black woman who just passed away, her role was minimized as the series continued. But whenever she was presented with scripts, she had a lot to do. And then before it was time for production, like her role would get cut. So Gene always kind of had the vision. So I kind of feel like with sci-fi, Gene was doing it from a diversity standpoint. But aside from that, I can't really think of any others, at least back then. And they certainly went around when I was a child. So I really hope that this comic book, really empowers people and really inspires them. I really do. I really do hope that.
I mean, I think because, like I said, there is a value to being embedded in all spaces. Blackness,
Yeah.
blackness is in Black history is American history, or world history, as we say. And I think, honestly, the history of storytelling probably I would say roots from Africa.
Yeah.
And like we think about Anansi and all the stories, and oral history before there was books. I mean, that was how people told stories. So there's something very powerful about the medium of storytelling, right? That's the human connection that connects all of us. We can all connect with stories. And I think we can all connect with stories that are beyond our realism, sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
I think that also, even in those beyond reality stories, there's aspects of real life in them too, right?
Of course.
The Iliad and the Iliad and all that, while it
Mm-hmm.
took place on a grand voyage and the Trojan War and all that stuff, that was still kind of based with kings. They talked about what was going on systemically as well in the stories, even if they're fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I love that you said that. What was your balance between like storytelling and fantasy and everything? The world is utopian and all that, and like throwing a little bit of realism in it, like real racism or real issues. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't want to be jaded to the kids' book, right? You want the kids to be uplifted, but you also want to use this as a teaching tool and say, the world ain't sunshine and flowers either. Sometimes there's some adversity there. So how'd you balance the fantasy, but also a little bit of realism in there?
Yeah, it ain't all peaches and cream, kids. It ain't all peaches and cream, kids. Stick with me, kids. I'm gonna get you straight. No, it's a fine line, Philip. I think it's a fine line because when I was a child, I certainly wasn't thinking like this. It was just, when I created these characters and created the world that they lived in, it was heightened reality. It was all fun. It was all fun. There was still, a threat when you're trying to stop a bank robber. All right, but that's about as real as it got. And then, I've been, very blessed in my public relations career. I do a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I actually helped our Mayor Jerry Demings. He's the mayor of Orange County, Florida. I helped him with this inaugural Juneteenth event last year, which was a lot of fun. So as I've, gotten to meet people in this space and, do more work that's related to DE&I, when I was preparing to release Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids, when I went back to it, I decided that it would be, crucial, very important to add some DE&I elements. I mean, it's the real world. Now, I'm not I'm not going to go overboard. I'm not going to try to, frighten kids, or frighten teenagers, because it is aimed towards a younger demographic, But there are some things that I will, lightly touch upon. I mean, even though Face Shifter has this, this scheme of turning everyone the same skin color, and he does talk about a little bit of some of the things that he experienced when he was younger. I'm not going to, beat you over the head with it. But every antagonist that they face, this is a 6-part miniseries that I am proposing. In each of the 6 parts, there will be an antagonist that Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids have to, work together to defeat. But each of the motives for these antagonists are based in real world truths. All right. So what I will say, I'll give you a tease for the next one. So Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids Volume 2, which I'm actually working on now, features a story that's called The Dime Piece with the Golden Timepiece. All right. And they are working together to stop Dr. Tish Talk, also known as Quatamaka, who has the ability to go back in time or go forward in time. Quatamaka wants to go back in time to save her son, a black boy that was murdered by a police officer. Now, what Quatamaka does not realize, or she may know this, she just doesn't really care. But every time she goes back in time, she's draining the life force of the city's inhabitants, which is the reason why Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids have to stop her. Now, I mean, her motive, some people may be like, I completely understand why Quatamaka wants to go back in time, to do what she needs to do, but when you're having negative impacts on the city, that's when Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids are usually called in to stop you. So
that's a pretty deep. That's a very deep thing, because I'm saying even in the kids' book, you're thinking like, wow, grief and loss, that's a reality and conversation. But then its impact on others, like she being selfish and only caring about her own grief and loss.
Yeah.
In the city. So that's a great way to introduce some heavy topics. But dang, I'm ready. Man, I'm going to read this one, but I'm excited just to see that. And I was thinking in my mind as we were talking, I was like, what would you view as a success for this? Right? This is a passion project. You got a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it. What would be considered a success with these releases? What would make you feel like you did it? Like you did it for that 13-year-old Jaylen, that 10th grade Jaylen, like you did it. You made it in regards to your science fiction journey or thing. What would be that success for you?
I think that if there were children that went on record to specifically say how the story helped them, or how it may have inspired them to tackle a science project, or how it may have now made them want to study engineering or technology, or hell, for that matter, get into like criminal justice. I think that would make me very, very happy, and also too, sales, of course. So, I mean, if people aren't purchasing it, then damn, what the hell am I doing? But no, I think that would be sales. But I will tell you this, Philip, my brother. When I was a kid, and I had these aspirations of, turning Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids into a legit comic book series, I always said I wanted to, and the dream is still true. I always said I wanted to, adapt it into an animated series of some sort, maybe even a live action project. And if I think that I will know that I have arrived when there are Lego sets that are created based on the Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids intellectual property, or there are Funko Pops, that are doing Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids, or they are in a Happy Meal. That will let me know that I have arrived. Those were the dreams that I had when I was a child. I still have those same dreams as a 35-year-old, and
to see it in other mediums, like we talked about, right? To see it come out of pages to other mediums.
Absolutely. That's right. And if that day happens, we're gonna say when. We're gonna say when, not if, but when that day happens, I will cry copious tears, my friend. All right. So keeping my fingers crossed, heavy prayers, but that is the plan. But you gotta start somewhere. All right. I think of people like Issa Rae, and who did Insecure on HBO and how she blew up, and then Quinta Brunson, who's getting all of this success now with Abbott Elementary and where she started. Like, you got to start somewhere. So I'm optimistic. I believe in God. I'm praying. I've got a supportive family and a lot of supportive friends. You are one of those friends. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. So I got a lot of people that are, helping me and, advocating for me. And I'm really feeling the love. I really am. So this has been great so far.
So when we see you crying in Walmart, it's okay. Like, just walk past you.
What Dionne Ward say? When
hey man,
walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet.
I'm like, yeah, this dude okay. Check on him.
Is he okay?
Yeah, I know we just told you the ice cream machine is broken at McDonald's. Why are you crying over this Happy Meal?
You know what's so funny?
That'd be dope. That'd be dope. That'd be like you hear your song on the radio. So technically, your song on the radio moment is when you see your thing in a Happy Meal or on the Target aisle.
Exactly. Damn straight. And you know what's funny? You made a joke about the ice cream machine always being broken at McDonald's, which is factual. That is factual. All right. I had that same joke in my comic book and had to delete the joke because I was like, I want to be in a Happy Meal. I don't want McDonald's executives to read this. They be like, oh, he clowning on us? He clowning? Nah, man, you can't be. So I had to delete that joke, but I had that same joke in my comic book. That's so true.
So you were so futuristic. You're like, man, like maybe in the future I don't want to cut ties with an unofficial sponsor in the future.
So that's actually the public relations professional in me. All right. So for those of you that don't know, Philip knows this about me. So yes, I do have a 9 to 5. I work in public relations, and then by night I guess I work on comic books, I suppose. But I am a public relations practitioner. So after I got done, drawing and illustrating this, I went back and read it, had a few of my friends read it, and I was like, ooh, I got to delete this joke from a PR standpoint because everything's a business, right? Like you have to go meet with. I would imagine you would meet with the McDonald's executive team or the Burger King team or what have you to sell them on your product to say, this is why I think I should be in your Happy Meals. So if they read the comic book and they say, wait a second, Jaylen, wait a second, what's this joke about this ice cream machine? I had to delete that. Had to cut that. Had to cut it.
I don't have that brain set. I'm like, hey, I'm saying all kinds of jokes, and I'm trying to do a speaking gig. They're like, nah, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you right now on the viewership. Yours is the McDonald's. My joke with my friends, and you're my friend now, so you'll now know it, is that we're saying I'm going to Ghana. And so the joke of it is I have this dream that one day that I'm randomly going to get someone else to pay for my trip to Ghana. Like randomly, like a conference, like I'll be a keynote speaker at the University of Accra, and I'm going to Ghana. So all my boys, when I'm doing this public speaking and stuff,
yeah,
like, we're going to Ghana, y'all. And we say that, like we joke and we throw Ghana for like Ghanaian flags in the chat. And like, yo, Ghana, and then my boy be like, Ghana, we coming for you with the Booker T, like Booker T look. Man. You get the full thing, but I say it like Booker T, like Ghana, we coming for you.
I love it.
So that's it. So it's really great, like to see that we both have this like we made it moment, but it's a tangible thing. It's based in somewhat steeped in the reality of what we want to do, but also it's just like it's good to dream that, right?
Absolutely.
It's good to dream about the McDonald's Happy Meal. It's good to be dreaming about randomly getting a trip to Ghana.
That's right.
On someone else's money.
That's
right.
So
I think that's the futuristic part. So I can't offend my Ghanaian brothers because I'm trying to go there. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm going to use my PR mindset and say, I love Ghana. Ghana, I love you.
Yes, sir. Love it.
Country. I love Ghana. I'm trying to go for free.
I love that. I love that.
So I think, we're going to, I try to keep my podcast, a little bit better time. So I think this is kind of landing the plane, but what are some last moment things that you want to say about the book? The comic book, the final thoughts of the comic book that you want to share with the listeners?
I will say that a dream deferred is not a dream denied, because this was an aspiration, a goal of mine that I wanted to have accomplished many, many years ago. But life be lifing, and that's actually the forward in this first volume is life be lifing. And about, as you get older, there's various obligations that we have, jobs, careers, families, bills need to get paid. The car needs, oil change. And some of these things, while great, because the family is great, a successful career is great. Some of these things can also be distractions from, some of the aspirations and goals that you may have had to, shelve temporarily. And sometimes when we shelve our goals, we kind of forget about them, and we lose sight of it. And next thing you know, we're like 75 and we're like, oh darn, I wanted to be a gymnast, or darn, I wanted to be a rapper, but you forgot about it. So I think that a dream deferred is now a dream denied. Stick at your goals and make it happen. One of my, as Philip indicated earlier, both of us are proud and active members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the best fraternity in the planet. But one of my fraternity brothers mentioned to me, well, I had two actually that said two things that were profound. One, my line brother mentioned to me, Jaylen, even though you wanted your comic book to come out 10 years ago, look at you now. You now have the connections. You've now established yourself as a public relations practitioner. You know who to call on to help you get the word out about it. Whereas 10 years ago, you did not have those connections. You didn't know where to start. But now you have people that you can call on to help you, or graphic designers that can help you, realize your vision. So you're in a better place to release it now. All right. So that was one thing that a fraternity brother told me that stuck with me. And then one of my other fraternity brothers, who was older than me, who I view as a big brother, he said to me, Jaylen, you're always focused on the end result. You got to learn how to start focusing on the journey itself. Like, enjoy the journey, brother. Now, to me, I feel like this comic book, while I love it, look, it was an uphill journey for me. But once he said that, like my viewpoint started to change. So I said all of that to say that if you have a goal, if you have a dream, if you have an aspiration, stick at it. All right. Try to dedicate at least 15, 30 minutes to it a day to keep your project going, to keep that momentum going. And eventually you'll see it through to its completion.
I love that, because I'm thinking about that in my trip to Ghana and public speaking. I'm doing things toward public speaking, maybe contributing to that dream. And someday I'll be there. And the only weird part, though, is that when we make it, then we're going to have a new place, because I'm like, all right, I went to Ghana. What's next? But right now, thing is getting to Ghana. Your thing is McDonald's, and there's going to be something else afterwards.
Exactly.
I love it. That's why I definitely, when you say, Philip, let's get on the pod, I was like, okay, what time?
Let's do it.
Your dreams motivate me to actually do it. Like, you actually realize and actualize something you dreamed about.
Yeah.
And the way that you shared it with me ahead of time. I remember you texted me and was like, I'm going to do a comic book. I said, okay. When? it wasn't even like, are you sure? It was more like, yeah, okay. I get it right. And that's literally, and those are the kind of people that you need around you. And I agree with your frat brothers. Like, I think that when you're in a space to do things, when you have, one, the resource to do it, but two, like, I think it's crazy is when you manifest it or actualize it so much that when you share it with your people, they're like, of course, that wouldn't even be a question. Like when you shared, I'm gonna do a comic book, the most people, like the people that are around you, say, yeah. Maybe they might challenge you with the logistics, like, okay, when, how, and that. Yeah. But it wasn't like, I don't think you can do it. It was more like, all right, how? Let me question how you're going to do it. Or that, but it's more like the basis of it is like, yeah, you're going to get it done, but let's talk about how it's going to do it.
Precisely.
I think that's when the world is supporting you around it. Your people are surrounding you. When it's like, you're not challenged to say you're not going to do it. It's more like how and when and where.
Exactly. Yeah. And you were definitely one of those people that were, always in my corner, because as you mentioned earlier, Philip, I said, yeah, I'm going to do this comic book. And Phil, you were like, when? I got you. No problem. Let me know how I can support, let me know when it's coming out. And yeah, we can do a podcast. It's not a problem at all. So, and that was a couple of years ago when I said that to you, and you were a man of your word, and you kept your promise. I appreciate that.
And you sent me little readings, and all of a sudden you feedback. I was like, man, this dude keeping me in loop the process. So it's great to see you. Go through that process.
And for those of you listening, really quick, Philip was actually one of the first reviewers of my comic book. You can see his quote if you purchase my comic book, which is available on JaylenChristie.com, JaylenChristie. Follow me on Instagram at the Superfly Nerd, TheSuperFlynerd. If you purchase a comic book and you look on the back cover, you will be blessed to see a review from the one and only Philip Wilkerson of the Positive Philter podcast. Philip had very positive things to say, and I really appreciate that, Philip. That meant the world to me.
I mean, it wouldn't be on brand if I trashed your comic book.
You wouldn't be positive. You wouldn't be positive. That's true.
I've been thinking about that too. So, man, I also have to be optimistic and hopeful. Like, what if someone met me in real life and they're like, "Hi, Positive Philter." I'm like, "Get out my face.
Get out my face."
Not very positive. That's kind of off brand. So, shot for shot, you know what it is. You ask me a random question, I ask you a random question. You go first, I go first.
Okay. Random question for Philip. Which do you prefer, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Man. Okay, here we go. I'm about to tell you this. And this is probably a very Switzerland answer.
Okay.
I like parts of each. So let's say this, okay? I like the original trilogy of Star Wars. Right? I love it. I think it's good. You know, it's campy, but it's for what it is.
Yep.
And then they kind of just do random stuff in the prequels and do random stuff in the afterwards. I'm like, man, they're doing too much. But the original Star Wars, key. And then Star Trek, I honestly never got into the original one.
Okay.
But one time I went on a binge and I was watching Deep Space Nine because the black dude.
Yeah.
What's his name? With an S, Cisco, something like that. It don't come to me because I was watching the whole thing. And he had a son that spoke to me because his son was on the ship.
Now, wasn't his name Captain Avery in the show though? Wasn't his name Avery?
Avery's son. You know, it was the black dude. It was a space station. Deep Space Nine was a space station. Yeah. And that was the whole thing about people coming and going. And he had a son, and he was his son. It was him, and because I think the mom passed away. But I still spoke to the story about the father-son bond, a black father and son, and that's what I did binge. Actually, I'm about to binge it again. So that is my yes and answer where I like that Star Wars and I like that Star Trek.
Okay, all right, nice. Okay, I respect that. All right, question for me.
Marvel, DC.
Oh, that's easy, Phil.
That's not easy.
DC, baby, all day.
DC what? Comics, DC shows. See, I think sometimes the movies, like DC movies, be like the Marvel movies hit,
man.
Cartoons hit. Like it depends.
DC. So here's what I will say. All right, get off the Marvel train. Oh, y'all be on this Marvel train, man. Every Marvel movie is not perfect. Marvel movies follow the same formula. And yes, what I will say is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because Marvel's making millions and millions of dollars. I get it. All right. But no, I'm Team DC. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I grew up watching Super Friends. All right. As I got older, I realized that they were the Justice League. All right. DC animated movies, yes, they are significantly better than their cinematic pieces, which has been released in theaters. But I am very optimistic regarding DC's future because I know that James Gunn has just taken over. I'm looking forward to Blue Beetle, which comes out in August. I'm looking forward to Superman, Man of Tomorrow, which James Gunn is actually writing right now. And this Flash movie is going to have Michael Keaton back in it as Batman. So I feel like, DC's, they're trying. I respect Marvel, so let me be clear about that. I do respect Marvel. When WandaVision came out, WandaVision debuted, I believe, in 2021, and they had Monica Rambeau in it, played by Tiana Paris. Loved it. The scene with her breaking through the force field to get into the city, loved it. I teared up at that part. All right, I'm not ashamed to admit that. All right, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I think that Angela Bassett is very deserving of this Academy Award nomination, and I hope she gets it. So yeah, I respect Marvel, but when it comes to Marvel and DC, I'm DC all day, unapologetically, baby. Unapologetically. Ask about your boy.
I don't know. I was about to say, man. I like I said, that's why I thought you was gonna take my stance where it's like I could just do a decision. I could do like a T chart and say which one got the better one because like I like both of them, both of them with an F.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
I like both of them, but I just like them in different categories. I think it's almost like strengths. Where do you look at their strengths and they're thriving in different parts? Because like I said, man, the animated movies for DC they hit. They hit. But then certain movies don't like. Some of the DC movies don't hit.
The DC movie,
I like it both, and the thing is, I like to watch both to make that judgment. I definitely watch both to see both.
The DC animated movie that comes to mind right now, immediately before we end this, is Justice League: Crisis on Two Earths. That is one of my favorites. That's some good stuff. That's some good animation.
That show was pretty dark.
Yeah, man. That was really good. That was a really good movie.
So they thought provoking. All right, well, this is the part of the show called Shout Outs and Plugs. You already did a plug again, but you can plug again. So plug. So shout outs and plug part 2. So shout out anyone you want to show love to, and then plugs where people can find you again as we wrap up this episode.
Sure. Okay. So shout outs and plugs, the sequel. All right. So I'm going to give a shout out to my family, my mom and my dad, my sister Brittany, who was actually the inspiration for the character Brittany McBrilliant. And through this process, I was able to bounce ideas off of her, which I really appreciated. My best friends, Matthew and William, who also let me bounce ideas off of them. My line brother, Carlin, my homeboy, Anthony Anamalechi, my homegirl, Cassie, my homeboy, Sir Darius Roundtree, who really told me to, get off my behind and make this comic book a reality. So he really pushed me to do it. So, Regina Smith, there are probably, a crap ton of other people that are not coming to mind right now. Dr. Tamika King, who was my African-American literacy teacher back in high school, who actually came back and edited my comic book for me all of these years later. I appreciate you. So many people to name, but everyone's not coming to mind immediately. But I love all of you. I love all of you. Charge it to my brain and not to my heart. And then for a plug, Stinkbombman, the Brain Kids, baby. It's available on JaylenChristie.com. JaylenChristie.com. Get your copy. Follow your boy on Instagram for all updates regarding news about Stinkbombman, the Brain Kids. My Instagram handle is @TheSuperflyNerd. Find me, follow me. It's lit.
I love it. Well, Positive Philter listeners, obviously all these things will be in the show notes. And if not, Jaylen's probably going to get on me and say, where are all these links that you're supposed to put in the show notes? But they'll definitely be in there. And definitely, so proud of you. As we said earlier, you're one of the people that motivate me. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. And vice versa, you hold me accountable. And that's what the brotherhood is all about. And that's what friendship's all about. So Positive Philter listeners, please get a copy of Stinkbombman and the Brain Kids. You can get that on the website. Please follow this episode. Please share it with a family member or friends. If you listen to this episode on Spotify or Apple, please give it a like or rating or review. That helps elevate the podcast. And lastly, as I always say, please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund. Every episode from now on is dedicated in memory of my father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch, who was a big advocate for anti-hunger. So please consider that is always in every show note of my podcast because he left a great mark on me. So Positive Philter listeners, check this out. This is great. And we'll come at you later. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.